Hello and welcome. Now we're looking at ethical violations by Ghanaian media, particularly the Akan-speaking ones. They are the culprit. And you look at all the scale and all fingers point to the Akan-speaking media, that they seem to violate the ethics of the laws in media more than the English-speaking ones. Why? However, have you noticed that even you, the listeners, would accept whatever comes from the Akan media more? However, you would complain if the same was said by an English media. And the typical example is a description of a little girl that's been raped. How the Akan media will broadcast it. If Joy FM dared to do that, all the professors in Legon, probably and beyond, would write letters expressing how disgusted they are. But if Adom FM did it, it's fine, news as usual. Why is it? Is it supply and demand, or is it a matter of if you build it, they will come? Which is which? However, Media Foundation have done a whole survey and studied a whole lot of programs, and they've come out with their report. And guess what? Adom FM came up tops. And I have the news editor of Adom FM in the house. My name is Nana Ansakwa, and this is PM Express. When I come back, I would introduce my guest. Stay tuned. Hello and ethical violations by Ghanaian media. Now with me to discuss these issues, and I'll start from my immediate left, is Dora Mauto, who's a programs officer in charge of communication and research. And then the gentleman is Zakaria Tango Musa, media law and ethics at GIJ. Yeah. And then our one and only darling lady, Efia Pukua, the Vim lady. I'm sure most of you have heard her yell and scream and probably don't know who she is. Like, she's quite pretty, even though she's a feisty one. Efia, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And you've never been on my show before.
Yeah.
You should come more often.
I'll come.
Zachariah, I'll start with you. What is this report about? Just to give us an outline. Is it to backlash the media? Is it to whip us in line? Is it to enlighten? What's the report about?
Thank you very much, Nana. But I don't think I'm the appropriate person to give us an overview of what the report is about,
Dora,
because it didn't come from me. It came
Dora, help us out.
Okay, thank you. Let me start by saying that the Media Foundation for West Africa is a freedom of expression advocacy society or organization. And we promote freedom of expression for the media and also for citizens, basically to allow the media and citizens to contribute to development processes and governance processes. And that is why we think that professionalism in the media is very key. And so as part of efforts to improve media professionalism and the standards of media practice in the country, we embarked on this project titled Promoting Professional Standards in the Ghanaian Media, and then helping the media to play a more effective watchdog role in society. So our main aim of embarking on this project is to help strengthen the media so they can be more effective in playing their watchdog role, and also by being very professional. Media professionalism has become so important because it helps in the credibility and the trust levels that people have in one media outlet as against the other. And so we as an organization promoting that the media be used for development and effective roles in governance processes. We don't want any media outlet to be disregarded, so to say, or to be discredited. We want all of them, whether it's a small platform or it's a big platform, to be taken seriously. And so we embarked on this project with funding from Star Ghana to promote responsible media and also to promote effective watchdog role of the media. So it's in two components. One, by way of the watchdog role, what we are doing is providing funding for investigative stories. So we put out a call, and then as many journalists as can bring in proposals for investigative stories that have the potential to instigate policy debates and things like that. But then with the professional aspects, what we are doing is that we are monitoring specific media outlets. You know, we have 40, 10 newspapers, 25 radio stations, and then 5 news websites. And as part of the process, to have a credible process, we hired a consultant, a veteran media practitioner, and a professor of media studies who developed an instrument that will be used in the monitoring. And the instrument was presented at a public forum where we had the NMC, PRINCPAG, Editors Forum, GCRN, media institutions, as well as educational institutions offering media studies. And they discussed the instruments and finally endorsed it. They made suggestions, they made recommendations, they were all effected. And so we recruited monitors, and those monitoring radio stations have been served with recording devices. And then for those who are monitoring newspapers, we have, or like we buy the newspapers for them, and with the aid of the instrument, they monitor the online and the newspapers, and they also monitor the radio stations. And so that is what we have been doing. Our main aim is not to indict any organization. It's just to highlight some of the lapses in the work that we do, so that we can call on the critical stakeholders together to help ensure that we have a better landscape that people can easily and readily reach out to, make their points known, share their sentiments, their concerns with duty bearers, and then get feedback as well, and then together help in the governance process. So basically, that's what we've been doing.
Before I bring Efia in, professionalism, whose standards are we using?
You see, media standards, we have so many angles to it. But then we have international media standards, principles, norms. Some of them are just general, wherever you go. And then there are country-specific ones, which are usually adapted from the international ones. And so here in Ghana, and specifically with this project that we embarked on, the main benchmark from which most of the issues that we are tracking were taken from is the GJA Code of Ethics.
The
Yes.
GJA Code of Ethics?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me just, if I went out of Accra to the village and I saw an old man standing in the, on the balcony, I'm being very polite. Oh, I want to say, if I take it to English, I'll be bush. Old man, good morning, oh, you know. So the culture and the language. So where does, you know, when does one become right and wrong? I mean, let me bring you in so that we can find a law for somebody to work in.
Well, thank you very much, Nana. And I think as my colleague here said, it is very important that we understand that when we talk about professionalism, you rightly posed the question, who's professional? Who defines what professionalism is? Does it have an international outlook, or it could be country or even continent specific? And there have been a lot of academic arguments about those things, and you know what academics do. They would actually agree and to disagree. But you have to look at it from a very practical perspective, and you've just given us another angle to that practical perspective that can be thrown at us. But there is a universal standard. And even when you come to that country-specific, continent-specific, there are some basic standards that cuts across. And those standards are not necessarily imposed on those country-specific scenarios by anybody, but it is the very culture, the very communal way of doing things that defines what those standards are. So, for instance, in the example you gave, you can say, Nana Maju, and that would be accepted within that context. But sometimes the way you even go about saying that Nana Maju, if you wave the Nana with the left hand, Nana could take offense to that. You know, so there are a lot of things, and this is what brings us to issues about ethics. And people have to understand, and we have to really acknowledge the fact that when we talk about ethics, sometimes it's not an easy way out, because sometimes it's a very thin line. Sometimes people are caught in a dilemma, because the thing about ethics is that whichever way you look at it, you can justify your action. But there is the worrying trend is where some of those ethical violations also lead to unlawful conduct. And that is where I think some of our media personnel are losing sight of those things, and that's the worrying aspect of it. But in terms of ethics, we can continue to argue about the propriety or impropriety. But what I always say is that when it comes to ethics, at least contemplate about what you're going to do. So I keep coming back to the very good example you've kickstarted the program with, the Nana Maju thing, for instance. If you wave Nana with your left hand, have you thought about how it would be taken, how it would be implied?
No, I've waved Nana with my right hand. But in the same gesture, if I did it in English, I would be deemed as a bushman. You know, but if I did it in Tree, I'll be deemed as somebody who's polite and acknowledging culture.
Yeah, because in terms of who you are, and it depends on who you are addressing. It depends on who your target is.
The same. The only thing I've changed is the language. The same. Yeah. The same individual. I'm just walking. I've seen an elderly person. You know, if I saw, oh, my good morning, oh, you know, then it doesn't work well.
Yeah, but
because I've changed the
language is cautious, sensitive.
So that's when I'm trying to find how are we judging the Tree-speaking media people.
Yeah, but I think, to be fair to the Media Foundation for West Africa, I don't think they are indicting those Tree-speaking programs because of the way, for instance, the differences in terms of the cultural sensitivity to the use of the language, but it's just the indecency that accompanies some of the use of those languages.
Let's bring Efia Pukua in here. And Efia Pukua obviously is on Adom FM. She's the news editor, and she broadcasts in Tree. So, I mean, if there's anybody to answer this question, it's you.
Well, Nana, I agree that professionalism is key, and we should at least show respect to the listeners who are the reason why we sit on air in the first place. Is very important. But you see, the problem with this debate we're having, the source of the problem actually starts from the institutions. You know, after 1992 Constitution, when we liberalized the airwaves, we hadn't actually formulated laws and principles and ethics to accommodate the hype, the pluralism that we were seeing on the media front. Even for English media, there were issues. If you remember the cases that have been in court about press freedom, it's been largely connected to English-speaking broadcasting houses rather than Akan. If you look at those violations that have been cited with Akan, it's just a recent thing that is coming. You live in a nation where you have media institutions like GIJ, AUCC, who train people for English market, nothing specific for Akan or local language broadcasting, nothing. So everybody you find in the practice of local language broadcasting would have gone through a transformation. It's very difficult. That's what my colleague spoke about, Mr. Tanko spoke about the ethical dilemmas. For us in the industry, it's a dilemma for us. There's another issue about the language, the development of our own local language, which is another problem. We haven't come to the point where we have developed our own local language up to a certain level where we'll find every word or phrase in the local dialect. So it's difficult. Sometimes you have to come up with a sentence to be able to explain or communicate the same thing that you'd have used English, one word in English, to be able to communicate it. So that's where our challenge is. You see, in all these challenges, I think that we have also not had a broader discussion on why, for instance, the talk was made of the GJA ethics. At the time the Code of Ethics was designed, there was no local language broadcasting. If there were, it was just GBC, and it had a very minute part of the audience share in terms of the population. So it wasn't actually used in the consideration. Now that we have come to a point where local language broadcasting has come to stay with us, in fact, if you check the statistics, among the audience or the population, about 70% of the population would rather go to local language broadcasting houses, Akan, Ga, Dangme, Ewe, they will go there. So have we come to a point where we appreciate that, okay, the sector has grown? Can we sit down at a round table and judge and design a set of ethics considering our culture dynamics that makes us unique? Can we do that? We haven't done that. So for me, it's going to be very difficult to cite broadcasting houses in local language for errors when we haven't given them the resources, the know-how to be able to perfect the system. If we have, then we can turn around and say that you haven't done this, you haven't done this. Then again, there's an argument that if you're a media house or a media owner and you want to go into local language broadcasting, then the onus will be on you to be able to acquire the resources, technical or other human resource, to be able to do that. But then again, if you go to the linguistics department and you ask them, then you will have somebody like Professor Jakumu who will tell you that we're still developing certain aspects of our local language. So it's a bit difficult even at this stage. So we still have to go with coining phrases and terms, you see. But what I'm saying is that we, as a nation, we haven't accepted that it is important to be able to get information to our people in our own local language in a proper way. And so it's difficult to look at the professional standards from that point of view.
I buy all that, but then one of the things the research came up with, and it's the use of intemperate and indecent language and mixing facts with personal opinions, especially during newscast. Now again, Adum came up first, so I agree. Now we can have short of words and have sentences to describe anything, but still, you know, how do we explain that, particularly with the Twi-speaking ones, have their own interpretation of the news rather than just reporting their news?
Okay, because you see, I think it's something that is part of the culture. What we do in, and it's not just limited to Adom FM, it is for all the language.
There's Adom, there's Omine, there's Radio Gold, Classic FM, North Star FM, Radio Jubilee, Angel FM, City FM, Fox FM, Obuoba FM, Lojanyo. It's just that, you know, Adom was on top.
Well, I think that, you see, I recently had a conversation with them. I was saying that we are the #1 station. So definitely, if there are errors too, it is fair that we are also #1. We are trying to correct the system. But I'm saying that, yes, you say you buy all that I've said, but then if you mix facts with, for me, I think is a local language way, or if you put it in our culture, okay, and you are telling a story. For instance, if you come to multimedia, we have a policy for local language broadcasting, which is that we present the news in a storytelling form. Storytelling form. I was just having an argument with a Media Foundation for West Africa just before we came on, said that, have you seen the multimedia policy? There's a policy, okay? So let's look at the policy. Are we breaking away from the policy? Are we doing something offensive? Then I gave an example earlier on before we came on set. Said Kwame Boateng did a documentary about borrowed penises. And it was on Joy in 3 parts. The last part was aired this Sunday. And people called the first time the first part aired. I said, why are you people mentioning penises on air? How else can you explain it? These are children who underwent circumcision and their penises ended up being cut off. I am doing the same story on Adom. Why should I not mention it? You see, so it's difficult when you say that. It sounds
more raw intrigue than it would in
I don't know why we have that kind of understanding.
Let me bring Tan going. Yes,
but isn't it the case that even if you're going to be, you know, explaining this in that very graphic or flowery Twi language, within our local context, we say Sebi, isn't it? We just say Sebi to sort of mitigate the effect of...
We do that.
So those are the things. Within the local language, there is embedded a way of trying to get people to soften that. But sometimes some of our people get carried away. We have to admit that. I am not going to sit here and say it is very easy. And you rightly pointed out that there had been a problem. Because when you look at the way we've all looked at some of these things, attention is always on the English-speaking programs. And we haven't really tried to find a way of assisting. Because they need a support. And that's why, you see, I want some of our local stations to see feedback in a more constructive way. I don't think it would help anybody if you go into that defensive posture, because we are all not infallible. We all make mistakes. So when you make mistakes and somebody draws your attention to it, invite the person and say, come, let's see how together we can, because it is, you are there to educate, inform. Some people say entertain. I had never believed that it is the duty of the media to entertain, but that would be another argument
Dora,
to have.
let me bring you in here. I mean, now as a presenter or as a newscaster, if I'm reading a man who's gone into the bush or grabbed this guy who went to take his little son, took him home, slashed his head off because the wife complained that, well, we have too many kids, I'm not going to give. I mean, can't I express my disgust towards this? I mean, why should I read this and be neutral as if I don't know whether it's right or wrong? It's wrong and it's disgusting. Why can't I express it?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You see, there are so many dynamics when it comes to some of these issues. And I really appreciate what Efia was saying in terms of development, culture, broadcasting, how far we have come, and the extent to which we have developed our language in broadcasting. In our local system, we have a way of telling our stories. Okay. In telling stories, we have different ways of saying the same thing in so many different ways. So even in the example, for instance, that she cited about the borrowed penises. In Chi, you don't necessarily have to say a penis. You can equally say nebema, which is equally accepted and it is known. Okay? And saying that in our context and in our local situation is preferable to going straight ahead to mention the penis in the local dialect as it is. Okay? And so we are saying that, yes, let's do the stories. Let's tell the stories as they are, but then let's not be sensational about them. And so in telling this story about the man who has killed the son, give us the facts. What are the facts? If after giving us the facts, you are so emotional and you want to pass a comment, let it be known that this is my position to the story. But don't let it go as part of the news. That is what we are talking about. And that's what we are saying that we should not do. News is news, okay? But then the problem that we sometimes find, like Mr. Tanko was mentioning, is that we try to mix information, education, and entertainment. And so even in news, we want to entertain. And that is where the problem is. We have entertainment segments on almost every radio station or TV station. So if it's entertainment, we all know this is entertainment we are watching. Certain things can be said, we can all laugh over them. But when it comes to news, it's news. And we have to keep to the standards of presenting accurate, factual news that is fair and balanced, that separates facts from opinions, and all those other principles that we are looking at.
I'm going to take a break here. When I come back, I want to stay with this news and entertainment business. I mean, aren't we too stressed in this world? I mean, there's Jida, Suba, this, that. Can't we have a little bit of a laugh during the news hour? And who makes the laws anyway? Stay tuned, I'm coming back. Well, behind the scenes, you'd love to be behind the scenes. It's even more heated than in front of the scenes. But before we went on the break, we're looking at ethical violations by Ghanaian media. And somehow the Akan-speaking stations seem to fall more corporate than the English one. And I wanted to find out why news cannot be entertaining. But before we do that, I want us to look at the relation between the institutions and the media, why they are not syncing. So, Tanko, I'll give you that.
Well, yeah, the institutions, the training institutions, there's this perception out there that are we actually training the students who ultimately would be the practitioners in a way to make them ready for the market. Arguably, in the past, I mean, I was a product of GIJ myself. Graduated somewhere in 1997, and looking at how things are done now, there has been a vast improvement. And of course, I think it is the recognition that you train people for the market. So we are moving away from that theoretical way of teaching our students and teaching them in a more practical way. But this argument that we only training the students for the English speaking, there is some merit in that, but it's not wholly accurate, because we still give them the tools and the skills that could make them function wherever they find themselves, because we make it clear to them that there are instances where you've got to tailor those skills, because they are transferable skills that we give to them. Those skills can be transferred, and depending on where you find yourself, you've got to be able to adapt to that. But there is no room when it comes to the issue about standard. Standard is standard. Decency is decency. Moral is moral. So you would be able to tell whether, with regards to my target audience, what would they consider as immoral? Of course, what is immoral to you might not necessarily be moral to me. But it's not down to you, the person doing the presentation. And that's where sometimes we tend to fall short, because it's always about how I feel. If I think I'm doing the right thing, then to hell with everybody. But it's about the people you are serving. So even if there is one or two people in those you are serving who have some concerns, I don't think it is a reasonable thing to do to just brush it aside. See how you can accommodate those concerns and see if you can do something about that. But we do train. But there is also this perception that, oh, maybe when this media liberalization came about, there wasn't rules and regulation to handle that. There is. If you look at even the mainstream, you mentioned that, and I was glad you said that. If you look at the mainstream media, that has found itself in trouble. I mean, we saw the recent election petitions. People went to jail because of contempt of court. You don't need to be a media law expert to get away from. If they had followed their code of ethics, the GJ code of ethics, all that it's asking you not to do, it's what would prevent you from coming face to face with the law. So all you need to do is to try and adhere to that. But of course, it is very important that we have to recognize that we are in a different terrain altogether. The Akan radio stations, the local radio stations are only going to be flourish. And there is a market for it. And there is all this argument about commercialization and professionalism. How do you mix that? It's not an easy thing. I have put up a radio station. I want to make money. So if by being flowery, by being sensational, that's what would get me the money, I think most people would consider that fares and the other issues about ethics might be secondary. But that's where we have to have a discourse. Because if we are not careful and we don't self-regulate ourselves, we give room to some of those opportunistic policy makers to come and impose regulations on us.
Bring Dora in here with regards to having a bit of news that makes you laugh and makes you giggle. I mean, there's so much stress in the world. I mean, should we always toe the line because, well, BBC don't do it that way, so we can't do it this way? You just want to hear a bit of a laugh, you know, somebody says a proverb to describe a situation that happens, and then another proverb to describe the next situation. I think, oh, that's nice. He knows a few more proverbs as you're driving in traffic, because there's too much stress. Why can't we break the rules and make our make our own rules? Let's even make it a law that all news has to be entertaining. Yeah.
Well, we may not necessarily have it that way, in as much as we would want. Tanko mentioned something not too long ago, that whatever it is, in every situation, there are standards, there are norms, there are principles. Okay, it's good to be entertained, and we don't disprove that. We have to always make room for that. But then when it comes to news, it's news. We have satiric programs, where I think on a station like Radio Gold, you have Kokonsa. And all that he's saying, it's more like a satiric something that he is doing. And that is the nature of it. It is meant to inform, at the same time to entertain. You can have just about 15 minutes straight news, and you are done. And then you can use the rest to do all the entertainment you want. But then let the news time be news. If it's soft news, it's soft news. If it's hard news, it's hard news. But then where we try to, for instance, make serious situations humorous. For instance, a young girl has been defiled, and the description and the expression and the idiomatic expressions that go with the description at the end of the day makes the whole thing loses its seriousness, and it becomes an issue of laughter, which should not be condoned. Okay, sometimes people are grieved, okay, but then through our news presentations, someone has lost a father, a son, a relative, and then by way of describing the story, like Ifya said, in the story form, we bring in some descriptions that at the end of the day let you lose kind of the seriousness or even the grief in the whole situation. We are not saying that keep us always stressed.
Like in Castro's case?
Maybe before I come there, when you listen to Joy FM, especially there's news night, 6 p.m. news, they have almost like an hour straight of hard news. Sometimes you have soft news here and there, but then they have introduced this bit about the flip side. And that is basically about news put in a humorous way, if I should say, or not necessarily news, but then things that came up in the course of the day that you can just laugh about. That is acceptable. You have the news hour, you go strictly to the news. And then we have that flip side that gives room for the entertainment that you were talking about, so that after listening to all that hardcore news, then you have something else that relaxes you, which is good, and we will encourage that. But then if we want to blend news and entertainment all at the same time, that's one, there's a problem with it.
Evia, let me bring you in here. You see, like if I meet you at the stairway at Joy FM and we're just discussing issues, even in Tree we would talk normally. It's just normal talk. But if the same things that we spoke about was being broadcast in the news matter, it's a bit different. It's a bit louder, it's a bit jerky all over the place. And that, there's a bit more added, to it. Can it be done, normally like we meet and speak to you, if I want to say, or me coffee, but, it's just normal, rather than the normal, I don't know.
It can be done. It can be done, just that we're not going to make any money for multimedia. We can't pay our salaries.
It gets too boring.
We can't pay the taxes. It's extremely boring and unexciting, and nobody's going to listen to us. Our audience share is going to drop on the tracker. Revenue will drop. Advertisers will run away from us, and we are in a competitive industry.
So that's what the people want?
Yeah. We have researched the market a while ago. About 3-4 years ago, Adam FM just went flat on the audience share tracker. Our audience share was average 0.6%. We wanted to find ideas about how we can make it more exciting for value, because we have over 80 workforce. We have utility bills to pay, we have salaries, taxes, and this is Ghana, a media house that has the audacity to criticize officialdom. If you do not fulfill your tax obligations, the next thing you're in the newspapers, and everybody's going to expose you for what you're worth. So yes, we have to come up with it. And before we went to 0.6 on the audience share tracker, we were doing what Antidora was talking about.
So prim and proper.
Prim and proper. We had segmented the news. So we had main news, we had entertainment news, we had business news, and it got us nowhere. We even had sponsorship on it, but the sponsorship just died a few months later. So there's a market there. We have researched the market to find out what the market wants. Earlier on in your introduction, you spoke about demand and supply, and that's what really that's the basics of marketing. It's about a demand and a supply. Yes, can we refine the supply? Yes, we can refine the demand. But can we completely change to do what she's talking about? News is news. No, hell no, we won't do that, because we won't get a dime. So we will not do that. We will not do that. You see, the flip side that she was talking about in reference to the news night, see, even that decision to include the flip side in the news is because Joy FM audience share in the news was going down. Now I've looked at the audience share is what I eat. I wake up at midnight and I analyze audience share. Even we have been to several meetings in multimedia where we have criticized Joy FM for sometimes Super Morning Show compared to City FM. Sometimes City FM does it in a very discussional, conversational manner. We say that your people are taking the discussion to the low level. That's why somebody like you, Nanansa, you were on, so that you bring another perspective to the morning. So you see, there's a demand in the market. If you design a product consistently and your product is oblivious of what is on the ground, the demands, the dynamics of the taste, the different, the changing preferences, then you're going to have a problem. Another example I would like to cite is social media. It's growing. Something that the ethics that we designed those days didn't consider, because at the time there was no social media. But now we have social media, so we have to include it in the ethics. I agree that we need to grow or revise the ethics to accommodate the changes in the trend that we're seeing. But again, it also comes back to the institutions. Are they developing resources? This kind of presentation that we're doing is completely different, and it's not limited to that. If you go to the Ghana Broadcasting Ubuntu, you'll find the same thing. If you go to Ebe, you find some of these, a little bit of these things everywhere. How can we say that we are developing, say, the syllabus in the syllabi in GIG or AUCC to actually train people specifically for the local market? That is what I think the institutions can come up with. Then maybe we have people. We do not lack the human resource to be able to do that. I myself was part of a UNDP-sponsored discussion on guidelines for local language broadcasting. And this thing came up seriously. This thing National Media Foundation is doing, it's not the first time, it's come up. But at the end of the day, when you come back to the institutions and the owners of these institutions, it's about revenue and the cost of production, one bulletin, the staff, the utility prices, the cost of even the rent, the equipment, and other things that this is a big issue. Again, if you go back to him being in English, for instance, somebody, Weekend City show, and he was saboted, that's the flip side there. Even in the news, people who initially were skeptical about how it would be received sent messages to Joy FM, we don't like the flip side. But now we are sitting here and commending them, oh, we can at least laugh a little. Everything that is new, you have this kind of reaction. But we allow it to simmer, like Akan broadcasting has, it has been fairly around for more than 10 years. So we can sit down at a round table, like I insist, and do a discussion about the ethics. Which one can stay? Which one can we make Akan specific or local language specific? How can we be flexible so that we can all help grow the system? I don't think that most of us in the Akan broadcasting have an attitude that, oh, we don't like this. No. But I told National Media Foundation for West Africa, initially when you were going to start, did you write letters to meet, let us discuss, this is the format, this is what we are going to do, So everybody, we are going to be monitoring you guys so that we are on the same page. We know that you are not doing it as a way to undermine our job, but we are all seeking to improve the business. Because I think that even the media owners appreciate that there should be some level of improvement consistently, because our audience is also improving, and we need to also improve alongside. But if you do it in a way where it looks as if you're doing something else in your office, that's where but I do not think that some of the things they cited, yes, we are at fault. But some of the things we are deliberately doing it for the value that we get. And that's very important.
Thank you. So have we gotten to the point where we need to get all media houses together to deliberately bring out the product so that I can say, well, I'm not listening to if anyone, I'm going here, but when I go there, it's the same. So I might as well stay.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a point there, because ultimately, as Efia said, it's about liquidity, economics, money. And it appears there are people out there who are happy about what they're doing. But if you agree willingly to be part of any society or club or something, you've got to understand that there are rules and regulations governing that particular society, and you have to conform. Albeit when you are conforming, you've got to probably say, well, I have to conform, but looking at my own personal circumstances. But yes, I think it's got to that stage where we all have to see it as we have a stake in this together. Because you see, that isn't it curious that just before any election, everybody comes together and starts expressing concerns because they think if we're not careful, these people are going to get us into some trouble and we are going to be killed or something like that. And then there is some level of decency. Even the so-called Akan languages that say we can't do anything about the flowery nature of our, the way we put things. All of a sudden, we are having some level of a choice of words that we are all comfortable with. So it means it can be done. But I agree with the fear that sometimes the very people who are complaining are the very people who are patronizing some of these things. So we all need some education. We need to educate people to know that, listen, this thing can lead to something else. But I think we haven't had that collective. And frankly, I think, as Ifia is pointing out, there is also this mistrust about when NGOs are doing this monitoring, what is the need for them? It's like, are they mourning more than the mourner? No, they can't be doing that. There's something in it for them. So if Media Foundation for West Africa comes out to say, you have done A, B, C, D, I say, of course, they've got something out of it. So because of this mistrust, it's making it difficult for us to have that dialogue. And I think we need to get away from that.
Let me take a break. And when I come back, I also want to look at content. Because another thing that came up was that we used too much of our airtime to talk about politics and more like economics, links to politics. You know, the social issues and developmental issues are on the back burner. But is that what you want? Because we're probably serving you exactly what you want. Stay tuned.
I'll take care of you.
All it takes is letting go.
Let you down. I'll always be by your side.
It's only when you do that you truly win.
Wipe away your tears. I'll be your best friend.
That's when you experience the magic of each moment. Like it's the first time. All it takes is letting go. A great man once said, "The world is won by those who let go." At Star Assurance, we take care of the things you care about, so you are free to be all you can be. Let go and let Star. Talk to us today. Star Assurance, your solid partner.
As an event organizer, anytime I have to organize a conference, workshop, seminar, or meeting, oh, how can I forget? With the pampering salon, the elevator, the restaurant which serves drinks, local and continental cuisine 24/7. Ah, the cleanest and largest swimming pool. The 7 conference rooms ranging from 30 to 800 seating capacity. The 110 standard, deluxe, executive apartments and suites. The underground car park. And for my security, it's insured. And so is the reliable and high-speed Wi-Fi. All this and more can be found at Mensvik Hotel. Mensvik Hotel.
Oh, madam, sorry. Why did you get to Bredam? I'm from Bank. I think that's the best. What do you mean? Me from Bank, I don't want to Timmy so can't tell myself at no more. Me from Bank, let's go. Let's be the music coffee. Madam. Yeah, damn, I'm some net. I and yes, I did. And you know, for the way, Mother. No, but just a young girl. Crash it. I don't know, Doctor. In Kitamudia would be why the banks now would do it. So be more check. Now go you banker. You told VAT also. After we see the banker and also you told VAT PR also.
Into my salary now hospital different bank. Omo issue was
no VAT. Na busiana meji wo bank. Ehun si hu na. Meaning no VAT. Nemom dwumedia foforo bi wo ha banks ni edi. A wo mo je hu sika. E be te say wo kwakwaji checkbook, bank statement, water bankers draft. Yamfa say wo ye bankers draft 2000 Ghana cedis. Wo tue fee a ye 5 cedis. Na sa 5 cedis no so and na wo tue 17.5% VAT a ye 88% pe. E ma ban. Eno ano no adia.
Oh sir. Me dance. And then me the musical go to bank. Send e be ya ni money phobia enya ho kwan.
Eno ano. Anya can you go?
Let's all continue to bank our monies with all our respective banks for financial growth. This announcement is brought to you by Ghana Revenue Authority with support from Ministry of Finance.
We are back on ethical violations by media. We're breaking all the rules behind the scene. But we're going to move on to find out this the supply and demand issue, the amount of airtime we give to certain subjects other than certain subjects. But before, I think Dora wanted to respond to Efia with regards to, playing fair. So I'll let you do that.
Yes. Maybe 2 issues. First, about the fact that we have a commercial interest in setting up media outlets. And for that reason, looking at issues of utility, looking at issues of taxes, looking at issues of... Yes, and all that put together. Seriously, we appreciate that, because you can't set up a whole institution like a radio station and you think that it will just run by itself. Okay, but then what we should also understand is that the broadcast spectrum is a limited national resource. It's limited. And that is why sometimes it's so cumbersome to get a frequency. Okay, so the small one that we have, to what extent are we using it or optimizing it to enlighten the public? Okay, so we are saying that yes, we appreciate the commercial interest and the commercial dynamics, but then we should also remember that we exist to serve the public. that said, I want to correct what she said that about starting the whole project and some way, somehow, they were not informed and all that. Before the project started, we sent letters to all the media houses that we'll be monitoring. When we were having the open forum to discuss the instrument and vet it, we invited all the media, especially those in Accra, because we organized the program in Accra. We invited all of them, and then we also invited for coverage. So there were 2 letters. One was simply for coverage. One was to management, producers, and then news editors, so that we'll all get to know that this is what is happening before I end. When they vetted and endorsed the instruments, I sent the mail myself. We sent to all the media houses that we are monitoring, giving them the instrument to say that, okay, this is what we are going to do going forward. These are the indicators. So use this to help you in your broadcast so that it doesn't happen that you didn't know about it and all of a sudden it's like we are sitting somewhere just to indict you or just to tarnish your image. So we went through all those processes, and there was coverage about the initiation of the whole project, to which multimedia was invited and they gave coverage. So it will be quite, yes, units, so many so units, yes. We had Adum TV, we had Joy TV there, and Amansan TV. I don't know if it's on the multi. Yes, and then there was Joy also. Okay, thanks for the correction. And then there was Joy also. So there was a little bit of publicity about it.
Okay,
just not to indict anybody. Yes.
I got little time left, but then I want us to look at 2 issues. One, how we can change the amount of time we give to certain content and way forward. Atanko, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, and I just wanted to make one very important point.
And if you make it brief for me.
Yeah, I understand the issue about commercialization, driving how we go about doing things. But the problem, what we need to recognize is that before you are granted the license, it comes with some conditions. Mm-hmm. And those conditions, if you go down the route that the local radio stations are going, you give room, and that's my concern, you give room for attempts to be made to say, we're going to take back your license, which the law allows them to do so, and that's my concern. It's also, we need to be very careful, because sometimes some of the choice of words can expose you to legal challenges, which is more costly. So ultimately, yes, you would get it in, but it's just that Ghanaians, maybe we're not as litigious as the Western world is. But when we get to that stage, everything that you get from the commercial will be whittled down.
The example was made about the Supreme Court hearing, and no Akan radio station was brought before the Supreme Court. Those who aired were not Akan radio stations. They were English newspapers, English media houses, except for the comment made by Sir John. And it was specifically targeted at him. The comment he made, not the platform. Mm-hmm. You see, so if we're talking about contribution in what Mr. Tanko said, contribution of local language media houses have contributed immensely, more than even English. In our last election coverage, and for that matter, all the other election coverage, I have been part of the 2000 election, 2004 elections, 2008 and 2012 election. In 2012 election, we set up an election headquarters with Cocoa Multipower on the Akan platform. We had the widest coverage, the highest number of audience share, the contribution that we make. When politicians, and we'll come back to the next topic, when politicians come on air, like Atubiga, and they make inflammatory comments, the comments are not made by presenters or radio newscasters. These are ordinary politicians, and cite them for their own errors and blame them for their responsibility. When we give them a platform, like the English platforms, we don't give them the platforms to come and insult or to come and inflame passions. You are 18 years and above, and responsible politician, and therefore you should be responsible for your comments. Again, the errors are not Akan radio station errors. Dora. If you look at the cases in court, most of them are not from Akan radio stations, a few of them.
Okay, I just want to correct what she's saying. You know, in media law, when we talk about publication, it's not just about the one who said it, but whoever broadcast it is also liable. And so it just happened that in the case of the Supreme Court hearing, they called for like Samia Wuku and Sir John for statements they had made on air. But then if they wanted to go a step further, all the media outlets, including the newspapers that published them, would have been liable.
And the media houses are not just Akan media houses.
No, I don't doubt that.
That's the emphasis I want to
No,
that's the emphasis I want to
we don't dispute
I'm not
that.
saying that.
We don't dispute that. But I just want to let us understand that, or get it that we shouldn't think that it's only the people who come on the programs who will be liable.
It was just an example. I'm drawing your attention that these are politicians who are supposed to know better because they are schooled. And they should know these things. That is why for multimedia we have a policy. So when these things are done, we issue a disclaimer immediately as a mitigation factor for us.
You see,
I'm not saying that it to exonerate us, but I'm saying it's a mitigation.
I like what you said.
Listen to my words well. I'm saying we have a policy as multimedia. It's a mitigation factor. Yes. We are schooled in these things.
What we call for is that when, for instance, they issue the disclaimer, why wouldn't you, for instance, we are on this set, okay, if I say something that is inflammatory, why don't you tell me to withdraw it here and now and apologize? But then you'd rather want to issue this disclaimer to say that.
That's what I'm saying that, you know,
so Dora, as long as Dora, you do that, you don't have a problem with it.
I'm saying that take your time and study the policy of each media house so that you don't generalize. Because sometimes unfair generalization also hurts us. In multimedia, we force you to withdraw. Just last week, there was something on Ekosi saying, Kaba force somebody to withdraw. And when you refuse to withdraw after persistent calls, we issue our disclaimer. So don't generalize. You see, because you cannot force the words out of that person.
Yes, okay? But then maybe beyond the disclaimer, in order to deter other people from doing that, maybe sometimes you need to go the step further to walk them out of the studio, or even not to feature them on your programs anymore.
Madam,
because if they're going to, yes, I don't doubt it. That's why I said that sometimes, if it becomes necessary,
it's a process. You see, you cannot sit here and tell somebody who manages their own media house that walk the person out. It's advocacy. We can do an advocacy over a period and try to school everybody, encourage people that if it gets to this point, because you see, the media houses and the presenters also have an image they want to protect. Yes. Because you have future interaction with these same people. So what will the person say of you? Sometimes I have made comments on air that people see me and they don't greet me. Just because it's a fair comment, but they don't greet me. When Alotejo said we should sack the Minister of Finance, I said, no, that's not fair. But you see, people who do these things. So in that long-term relationship that we are trying to build and working them out, you need to meet each other halfway. And said, okay, you have issued a disclaimer. Anything that you say, you are responsible for that.
Quickly, do we give an unfair advantage to politicians? Do we give too much time to politicians?
I don't think so. I think that, yes, we give too much time to political issues, especially in the mornings. Because, you see, morning shows have come to be around politics. But I think that we can tweak it and make it a little bit more about social issues. That's why I'm happy about what multimedia we're doing now with Joy FM. We're doing more social issues. Even on Adum, we're trying to do more social issues and other things. But you see, sometimes even the social issues have a political angle because they are political figures who are supposed to act on certain matters. When we spoke about the AMA issue, I remember you were very vocal with the AMA boss because it's a political head and needs to do something about it. Cholera has killed more than 20 people and we have not had any heads rolling. We should speak to it's a social issue, but there's a political twist to it because you need them to play ball.
Dora, I mean, should we give more time to politics? Because I know people complain that, oh, it's all about politics, but what is not politics?
I like that. You see, and the example that she just cited will let you know that to almost every issue, there's some little bit of a political angle. But then what we are saying is that when you are tabling your issues, okay, try as much as possible, like she said, you are making a conscious effort to include more social issues and developmental issues. When you have those issues and you have to speak to politicians on one or two issues, it's understandable, it's appreciable. But then it doesn't have to be that you have issues on health, issues on education, issues on whatever, all being responded to by political panelists. And on some of the radio stations, you have like regular. In fact, I can close my eyes and tell you that for one particular radio station that I sometimes listen to, I know who comes in the morning on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, through to Friday. Okay, and yes, and it's like they are almost all political people, as in this person represents NDC, this one represents NPP, and this one. So when we are talking about health, why would we not, you know, so they are masters of all, and they seem to talk about everything. And in all of them, they try to push in their propaganda, which doesn't help our overall development.
Tanko, is that what the population wants?
Partisan politics being discussed overly on radio, TV, it's certainly too much, we need to take a back seat on that. But you also made the right point and said, well, it's not politics. Everything we do, everything we say, it's about politics. But to me, I think the situation where almost everything we need to bring a political figure without giving the very people who the politicians are supposed to serve the opportunity to come and have a say. It's as if you're not a politician, or even if you're not educated, this is called so-called Western education with masters and degree, then you don't have any stake in the development of the very country. And I think that is something we need to see. And some of the radio stations have acknowledged that and are trying to vary, but there is more room for improvement.
And just a quick comment. For the media houses, it's so difficult sometimes for you to get professionals in the studio because of the way we have polarized our nation. Even when they express their opinion, I've spoken to people in political science department on their issues about the economy, about governance, and people have attacked them. So
next time when you
sometimes
go,
they have research findings that can help us. When we did the story about Article 71 office holders, the research that was done by Dr. Jampo and Anamzoya, people attacked them. People attack them. So the next time, if you want them to come, they don't want to come. I can count 5 people I know in the political science department and economics department who have refused to speak to me on radio.
The reason why some of them are refusing to come, I have had several invitations where I don't want to go there. Because sometimes some of our moderators, the presenters, they even want to, they become like publicity junkies. They want to make more news than the person, and they play to the gallery. And sometimes the choice of words, the way they define the questions, you are in a no-win situation. And so if I'm going to be put in that situation, I won't even come at all. So we need to look at all these things, and I think collectively we can do something about it.
Thank you very much. But as Sophia said, that's round table. If there's any carpenter out there, start building this huge round table, because we need to sit around it and discuss. But on Thursday, those of you who follow That's My Opinion on Thursday, this Thursday I'm asking that how are we ever going to fix Ghana with the broken family? There are too many broken families producing future menaces. And how will we ever face Ghana? Some of the statistics I'll put out, you will be amazed. And don't forget to tune in. 2 o'clock on Thursday, That's My Opinion. How are we going to fix Ghana with the broken family? Guys, thank you very much. It's been an exciting conversation.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.